But we were talking yesterday on the show about deplatforming and all these bills in Congress as both Democrats and Republicans, some members of both parties working to destroy social media as we know it by repealing Section 230, and which would allow people to sue companies like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube for the content that their users create. And it could that protection, that shield that Section 230 offers. You know, my position is I would like to keep politicians generally away from the internet and voting on these things, because very often they have no idea what they're doing. There is, of course, the law of unintended consequences. And plus, you know, I don't want 85-year-old Chuck Grassley of Iowa making decisions about how the internet works. No offense, I don't mean to be ageist, but there's a lot that can go wrong here. So we were talking about that yesterday on the show, and something else that has happened that this is so crazy to me. But something that has happened in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, who is a rising star in the Republican Party, and there are rumblings that he might be a prospective candidate for the presidency in 2024. He's very well liked by Republicans, and you know, of course, the field is frozen because we don't know yet what Trump is going to do for 2024, and if Trump runs, he will be the nominee because they all still worship at the altar of Trump. But Ron DeSantis has signed a law. This is from NBC News. Florida governor signs ban on deplatforming by tech companies. The law imposes penalties of up to $250,000 a day on a social media platform that bans a candidate for office. The tech industry says the law, quote, takes us closer to a state-run internet, unquote. Now, this is madness, in my view. And first of all, I don't understand how an individual, again, this is not the federal government doing this. This is an individual state doing this. So I don't know if this is even enforceable, but it's crazy to me. And, you know, I pointed out to somebody earlier on social media, and I avoid arguments on social media. I save it all for the show. But there's a lot of conservatives that are applauding what Governor DeSantis has done. And it's obvious what their motivation is. This is really all about Trump. This is absolutely all about Trump, you know, because Facebook and Twitter, you know, they've kicked Trump off of their platforms, you know, and he went and started his own, of course, but which is really just a blog site. I'm going to sign up for that, though. I am curious to see more of that. I'm sure very compelling content. But But the thing is, I was pointing out to some people online is these are private companies. And if you're a private company, you can have anyone participating on your platform that you want or don't want. You have the right. In other words, Facebook has the right to kick you off of Facebook. Twitter has the right to kick you off of Twitter if they don't want you on there. YouTube has the right to kick you off of YouTube. Now, it might not always be fair. And, you know, this is a topic that we've discussed a lot on the show, and we've had other people on the show who've had to deal. I'm thinking of someone very specifically who's a very controversial figure, but a certain individual who's called into the show a couple times to talk about being thrown off of YouTube. But these companies have a right to do that. They have a right to police their content, and if they feel that you have violated their terms of service in some way, they have a right to throw you off. They're private companies. And we call this the right of free association. And conservatives and libertarians, libertarians even more so than conservatives, but conservatives as well, if you talk to them ideologically, they tend to be very much in favor of the right of free association. The right of free association being that you get to associate or choose not to associate with whomever you want, and it's not up to the government to tell you who you can or cannot associate with. right? It's none of the government's business. It's your business. You make these decisions for yourself. But what I've found over the years is that when conservatives and libertarians talk about the right of free association, what they actually mean is, and I can give you a couple of examples of this, what they actually mean is they're in favor of the right of free association right up to the point when it becomes inconvenient for them. And then they will tie themselves in a knot to argue for an exception. This is an example of this. When they get mad about these private companies, these private businesses deciding to deplatform somebody. Again, they have a right. They have a right to deplatform you. They have no legal obligation to allow you to participate on their platform if they don't want you to. But, well, they kick Trump off. All of a sudden, conservatives and even a lot of libertarians, because, we also learned a lot of libertarians aren't real. Don't get me wrong. There's some great libertarians that I follow online on social media, like Sharon Presley, who's been great, Dave Nally, who's from Texas, who's a great libertarian, who, they're willing to call BS whenever they see it, regardless of who it is. But there's a lot of libertarians also who I have followed on social media who, just like conservatives in the Republican Party, were more than happy to join the cult. And you know what I mean by the cult, because it is a cult of personality. Donald Trump comes along and they're like, well, he's not very libertarian. In fact, he seems kind of authoritarian, but we love him anyway. It's like everybody's basically phony. I mean, don't get me wrong. And I don't mean to just pick on the right and libertarians who are sort of the right, but not really in some ways. But liberals are guilty of this too. There's examples of everybody. I've just come to this conclusion. At this point in my life, I've met enough people. I've had enough life experience to realize most people, not all people, I would never say all, but most people are basically phony when it comes to their ideology. They adhere to their ideology right up to the point that it becomes mildly inconvenient for them. And then they just find a way to pretend that, they haven't really committed to whatever positions it is that they've chosen, right? So this is an example of that. Conservatives and libertarians, they're all about the right of free association. Oh, but it's affected Trump in some way. So because it's affected Trump, now that, well, no, they don't really believe in it in this case. They actually want the government. In this case, so this bill that DeSantis has signed into law in Florida, they actually want the government fining private businesses for not doing business with people like Trump and not allowing him on their platform. That's what this is all about. But again, they only care about the right of free association when it's convenient. I mean, look at mask wearing. Again, a lot of them, in theory, if you're walking into a private business and you believe in the right of free association, you should, in theory, right? You should believe that that business has the right to enforce whatever rules they're going to enforce. So if that business says you have to wear a face mask to enter our business, you would think that someone who really believes in the right of free association would say, yes, okay, I'm required to wear a face mask to enter your business. It's your business. It's a private business. You make the rule, whether it's a rule that you have made or a government regulation that you are following, that you are choosing to follow because you don't want to get in trouble. I should respect that. You have a right to not want me in your store without a mask, and so therefore I will wear a mask to enter your store. But instead, a lot of these people, you talk to them and you say, well, here, let me present a hypothetical. You say to them, okay, so you believe in the right of free association and you believe that right is absolute. Well, yes, of course. I'm a conservative or I'm a libertarian. Okay, so let's say a private business decided that maybe there were certain types of people. Maybe there were certain people who fall into a certain demographic who wanted to enter their business. You, in theory, if you really believe in the right of free association, you would actually, even if it's wrong to discriminate, you actually would support that private business's right, quote unquote, to not have certain kinds of customers in their store, right? Well, yes, of course. Don't get me wrong. I'm not racist and I think discrimination is wrong. But of course, I believe in the right of free association. And if that business doesn't want to serve certain kinds of people, the government has no right to force them to. Oh, okay. Wow, you're really committed to the right of free association, aren't you? Well, of course I am. I'm a conservative, or I'm a libertarian, and I believe that this right is absolute. Oh, okay. So if that private business, since they have the right to turn away anyone they don't want in their store or make whatever rules about who they serve or who their customers are, I guess they have a right to insist that you wear a face mask, right? What? No, of course they don't have a right to insist I wear a face mask. I'm an American and I have a constitutional right to be in their business without a face mask if I don't want to wear one. The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bible, they all say I have a right to go in there without a face mask, even if I have COVID and get everybody sick. That's my right as an American. Oh, okay. So I go through all that just to point out that I've come to the conclusion at this point in my life that roughly, I'm going to say, again, I know it's cynical, I think about 95% of people who claim to adhere to an ideology and certain principles and values and whatever, I think they're basically phony about it. I think everybody really deep down just believe whatever they think is convenient for them. That's a conclusion that I've come to. It's just, I use that example with the face masks because that's the most glaring example of it. But this is also another glaring example, what Governor DeSantis has done. And then today on social media, I see all these conservatives crowing about how great it is. Gonna stick it to these social media platforms that think that they get to decide who participates. Even though we believe in the right of free association. But this, you can't violate someone's First Amendment rights. Why not? They're private businesses. Well, I mean, ultimately, it's all about Trump over everything else, right? I guarantee you, I promise you, I really believe this. If Facebook and Twitter had not kicked Trump off, none of this would be happening. None of this would be happening. And if Facebook and Twitter had kicked off, I don't know, some liberal, who had made a big stink about it, or who people made a big stink about them getting kicked off, no way in hell any Republican anywhere would be going, oh, we got to maybe figure out a way to punish these social media companies for censoring this person. No way, no how would that be happening. It just wouldn't. This is all about Trump. That's what makes this kind of thing so sad. What's interesting about it, though, is I have a theory that deep down, Ron DeSantis probably doesn't like Trump very much, probably resents him, because this is what is standing in the way from Ron DeSantis being the Republican nominee in 2024, because he is a rising figure. The Republicans love Ron DeSantis, and he's a relatively young guy. He probably has a great shot at, going beyond the governor of Florida. I mean, that's a big job, governor of Florida. But I think he could be. Were it not for Trump, take Trump out of the equation, I think Ron DeSantis could be the Republican nominee in 2024. But as long as Trump's around, and as long as Trump's like, yeah, who knows, maybe I don't know what I'm going to do. So he probably secretly resents him. Here, let me read this quickly before we run out of time. Florida Governor DeSantis on Monday signed a law that gives the state the power to penalize social media companies when they ban political candidates, escalating a fight between the tech industry and Republicans, such as DeSantis and former President Donald Trump. The law to prohibit deplatforming is the first of its kind in the nation and may be a model for other states to follow, even though one tech business group said the law runs counter to the First Amendment. DeSantis celebrated the law as a blow against, quote, Silicon Valley elites, who he said were seeking to censor conservative political views. DeSantis said in a statement, quote, what we've been seeing across the U.S. is an effort to silence, intimidate, and wipe out dissenting voices by the leftist media and big corporations, unquote. Research on social media has frequently shown the opposite, that conservative politicians and websites can be so effective on social media that they often dominate measures, such as Facebook's ranking of top links. Facebook has also relaxed its rules so that conservative pages are not penalized for violations. So in other words, so this whole thing, which is stupid to begin with, but this whole thing, not only is it just to, to make Trump's base happy, but it's also a solution in search of a problem. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and other major services blocked Trump shortly after the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol by his supporters. Trump violated the terms of service that users agree to when they sign up, including terms that bar the promotion of violence, the company said. Florida's law says that social media companies may not permanently delete or ban a candidate from office. A candidate for office. Suspensions of up to 14 days are allowed, and a service can remove individual posts that violate its terms of service. If a company's actions are found to violate the law, the state's elections commission could fine a social media company $250,000 a day for statewide candidates and $25,000 a day for other candidates. Individuals in Florida may also sue for violations of the law, such as a failure by a company to be transparent about its terms of service. Companies are excluded from the law if they operate a theme park or entertainment complex, a provision that was added to the law to protect Disney's streaming service, according to Orlando Weekly. A similar proposal is making its way through the Texas legislature. This is crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. By the way, I will say it's interesting. There may be a rare intersection of, now that conservatives are apparently in favor of government control of social media. There may be an intersection of conservatism and liberalism here, because there are some liberals, and I absolutely disagree with this, who believe that services like Facebook and YouTube and even Google itself and whatnot should be declared as public utilities and should be taken over by the government, which I absolutely 100% oppose. But, hey, it seems like conservatives are into the government controlling social media. So, maybe they're onto something here. Maybe conservatives, because as we discussed yesterday on the show, there are some Republicans and Democrats who seem to be working together to try to wreck the internet for everybody. Maybe this is another opportunity for liberals and conservatives to work together to try to destroy social media.